James Totten is best known for his role during the Arsenal crisis in Little Rock, Arkansas in early 1861. Then a captain in charge of a company of soldiers of the 2nd U.S. Artillery stationed at the Little Rock Arsenal, he is credited, along with Governor Henry Rector, of preventing perhaps the first shots of the Civil War when a Confederate sympathizing militia attempted to take over the arsenal. He was born September the 11th, 1818, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to Dr. William N. Totten and Margaret Totten. His father was a veteran of the War of 1812 and moved to Little Rock, Arkansas in the 1830s. Dr. Totten helped select the site for the U.S. Arsenal in Little Rock and was superintendent of arms at the arsenal for a period of time. Dr. Totten and his wife Margaret are buried in Mount Holly Cemetery in Little Rock. James Totten began his military career when he graduated the United States Military Academy in 1841. As a first lieutenant, he served in Florida during the Seminole Wars. In 1855, Totten was promoted to captain and sent to Kansas to help keep the peace between the pro- and anti-slavery factions fighting over the issue of slavery in the state. On the 21st of November, Captain Totten and 65 men of Battery F of the 2nd Artillery were ordered to join the 25 men already stationed at the arsenal in Little Rock, Arkansas. As his men prepared to make the journey to Little Rock, Captain Totten went ahead of them on leave to visit his mother and friends in Little Rock. His men joined him in December, and he officially took command of the arsenal. The increase of U.S. military presence at the arsenal caused great concern to the Confederate-leaning populace of the state. With a fear that the Little Rock Arsenal would soon receive more reinforcements, a pro-Confederate militia of 1,000 men made their way to Little Rock from the southern part of the state. The arrival of this militia group in the capital city sparked the Little Rock crisis. Many feared that the first shots of the brewing Civil War would be in Arkansas's capital city. Even though Captain Totten had informed his superiors of the situation in Little Rock and requested instructions, none were forthcoming. He was on his own to deal with the crisis. Through a series of letters in which the governor pleaded with Captain Totten to surrender the arsenal to prevent an infusion of blood, Captain Totten refused to outright surrender the arsenal to the militia. So the two men worked out a compromise in which Captain Totten would turn the arsenal over to Governor Rector, whose state was still loyal to the Union. Governor Rector promised not to turn the arsenal over to the militia group, and Captain Totten and his men would leave the city, and the arsenal would only be turned over to the Confederate States if Arkansas eventually seceded from the United States to join the Confederacy. Believing this was the best peaceful solution, and with no direction from his superiors, Captain Totten agreed, and he turned over the arsenal to the state of Arkansas. His men were allowed to leave the city unmolested. In appreciation of his peaceful decision, the ladies of Arkansas purchased a sword and presented it to Captain Totten before he left the city. After leaving Little Rock, Captain Totten and his men of Battery F of the 2nd Artillery went to St. Louis, Missouri to await further orders. August 10, 1861, Captain Totten and Battery F were in the 1st Brigade under Major Samuel D. Sturgis at the Battle of Wilson's Creek in Missouri. He and his unit performed well, and it has been claimed that he used the sword given to him by the ladies of Little Rock to direct his battery, which resulted in the first Civil War casualties from Little Rock, First Lieutenant Omer Weaver. His mother, Mrs. Mary Weaver, had been one of the ladies who had presented the sword to Totten in Little Rock after the Arsenal crisis. Angered by his using the sword at the Battle of Wilson's Creek, one of the ladies wrote Captain Totten an angry letter demanding that he return the sword. He did not oblige her request. After the Battle of Wilson's Creek, Captain Totten was promoted to lieutenant colonel and made chief of artillery in Missouri, and on February 12, 1862, he was promoted to brigadier general in the Missouri militia. He then commanded the 2nd Division of the Army of the Frontier in 1862. The rest of his Civil War career was mostly administrative duties. However, in 1865, he distinguished himself at the Battle of Fort Blakely in Alabama and was promoted to the brevet rank of colonel in the regular army. After the Civil War, President Johnson would promote him to the rank of brevet brigadier general in the regular army. Having reverted back to a peacetime army, Totten's rank reverted back to lieutenant colonel, U.S. Army. After the war, he served as an inspector general in many military departments around the country. During his military career, Colonel Totten had developed a drinking problem, which led to his court-martial in 1870. He was found guilty of disobedience of orders, neglect of duty, and conduct to the prejudice of good order and military discipline. He was sentenced to reduction in rank and loss of pay for 1 year. Soon afterwards, he retired from the military. He died in Sedalia, Missouri on the 2nd of October, 1871 at the age of 53 and was buried in Crown Hill Cemetery. His military legacy lived on through his sons, Charles A.L. Totten and John Reynolds Totten, who both graduated from West Point and had military careers.